it's Lisa. It's time for me to create a new notebook for my everyday stuff like to-do lists and menus and just general notes that I want to keep. I keep my calendar on my phone, and this is kind of where I keep everything else. The notebooks that I've used in the past where I have covered the top, the spiral bound notebooks, the Mead business notebook that I used, that is definitely discontinued. So people had asked about me about it, had trouble finding it. It's definitely gone. It was probably discontinued at least a year ago, and I have run through my stash of them, so I had to find something else. I went to Office Depot, and I found this notebook. It's a little more expensive. Hardcover business notebook. It's 8.5 by 5.5, so it's close. The size of the ones I'd been using, I think, was 9 by 6, so it's closest in size that I could find. And I liked the sturdy cover. It has these little post-its on the inside, a place for you can put business cards or like appointment cards, that kind of thing in there, and just some pockets for some extra stuff. So it's a nice format, so I'm going to give this one a try. It doesn't have a lot of pages in it, so I'm sure I'll run through it faster than my previous one at 60 sheets. I don't know how much the other one was, but I know I have more sheets than that in there. Now, I could cover this with paper like I've done before, but before I left the store, I knew what I wanted to do. I want to put gesso on this and put paint on it. Now, I don't know how this is going to go. If I ruin it, it's not the end of the world. I think probably the worst thing that could happen is that I warp the cover with a lot of moisture, but I don't think that will happen. I think, it might turn out that I don't like it, and then I'll cover it with paper, but we're going to try it with some gesso. So I'm going to put some paper down here so I don't mess up any of the parts of this, and I'm also going to use some washi tape because I don't want to get paint on my spiral bound part of this. So I'm just going to run a strip of washi down here, and I need to get this really straight. So I need to find my ruler and mark that so I can get that super straight. And I have no idea where my ruler went. I'm using a white pen to mark the line here that I'm going to put my washi tape against. Then after I finish, then I can pull the washi tape away and hopefully have a nice clean line. So we're going to go over this with some gesso. Now this notebook has a texture to it. It may not show up that well on the screen, but it is quite textured, and I'm not going to be able to camouflage all that texture. That's okay. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just trying to get the dark color covered up so that the paint that I put on there will really show up good. I probably could have gotten by with one coat of gesso, and also the gesso will help the paint stick to this. So, but I went ahead and did a second coat. That gives me a nice clean surface to start with. To put my paint on, I'm going to use a Gelli plate. This is a hexagon plate in one of the minis from Gelli Arts, and I've got a whole bunch of colors of paint here, just the things that interested me. It's not quite fall yet, but this is primarily going to be used during the fall, so I've kind of gone with a lot of fall colors. I do have some like teal blue in there for contrast. We're starting with lots of red, and I want to not have to change colors constantly through this. So I am going to stamp off some on this scrap piece of paper because I want to change a little bit, but I don't want to have to constantly clean my Gelli plate. So I'm doing a couple of layers here with the stencil, and then I'm taking what's left of that and adding another press onto my background, onto my journal. And that color paint is just an like an Anita's, no, it was a cream coat. It's a cream coat paint from Hobby Lobby. So I'm using some fancier acrylic paints, like golden paints, and then I'm using some cheapy stuff. So just a variety of paints. I've got some distress inks here as well, distress paints here as well. And I kind of measured down to see where to put some more of these. I don't want all of the rust color together because I want to put that blue in there. I'm not being super precise about the placement of these. I'm getting close, but again, it's not that critical to me that it be absolutely perfect. I'm just trying to get a lot of color on there. And there is something on the bottom of this notebook. There's this like little engraved symbol, and I'm going to take a paintbrush later on and push the color into that little crevice that was on the front. I'm challenged a little bit by these that are over there next to the spiral bound. I'm kind of having to turn the jelly plate to get it to kind of fill in that color. But it's working reasonably well, better than I kind of expected it to. Add some more stenciling in and start filling in some of the little odd gaps on the edges. And the stamped off sheet is actually really pretty because it's a nice, very flat cardstock, very smooth cardstock. So it came out really good as opposed to this more marbledy type of cover that the notebook had. But it all still works. The texture is not a bad thing. Just a little bit different. I'm adding some citron from Distress Inks as another color and using a leaf stencil to add some leaves. And I just kind of have one more I need to fill in there in some of the blue or blue-green kind of shades. And that color I think is Lagoon, also a Distress Ink color, or Distress Paint color I should say. And I'm close. I've got some holes there I need to fill in with a little bit more paint. This is a little darker in person, a little more vibrant than it looks like on the screen. I think it's just the lighting that I had when I was filming it. Now I can go over these more than one time. I can stamp over the top of them, add some more layers, get some more colors in there. And I do want to add a little bit of individual stenciling on some of these little hexagons. So I had taken a paintbrush and kind of pushed paint into that little crevice in the bottom where they had sort of a little emblem that went with the notebook. And now I'm taking a stiff paintbrush and adding some paint over some of these leaves so I can put them exactly where I want them. And I actually just picked the paint up off the stencils, what was left of it, because I didn't really need much. And we're really close here, but I think that I need just a little bit more stenciling. There's not enough blue. There's blue kind of through the middle and then down there in the lower left corner, but I felt like I needed a couple blue in a couple of other places, so I did a little bit of stenciling of blue, and it was kind of bold, so I had to sort of balance it by putting it a couple of other places on the notebook cover. I'm adding a little bit of paint along the edges of the notebook, cover up the white gesso. And I wanted to write like the word every day on here and the date, and I really hadn't let it dry good enough. And also one of my markers was getting a little dry, so I just kept trying to dry it some. I was a little bit impatient, wanting to get this finished. I had left it to dry for really not for that long, but just for a little while. After I do the Mod Podge over the top, I leave it for a couple of hours before I come back and show you the finished product. But I'm just going to do a little writing here and getting that with one of the Faber-Castell pens, one of the smaller ones. I think this was the letter M pen, and then add the date, the beginning date. I'll have to add the end date to it with a Sharpie when I'm done. And now it's ready for some Mod Podge. I pulled that tape off to make sure I get a clean edge. I had one little place I had to scrape up, but I had a really, really good clean edge. Now we're going to put some of that back
and we're going to add Mod Podge, I would say it wrong. And I have the tape just a little bit to the left of the paint. And now I meant to warn you, you could laugh at me there. I was showing you the Mod Podge and I poured it out. And I laughed at myself because I just sort of dumped it all over the table. In the faster motion here, it's hard to tell. But I made a bit of a mess. But I didn't get it on the journal, and so I was able to clean it up and get 2 coats on there.
The Mod Podge is dry. And one thing I thought of after I finished this last coat of Mod Podge was maybe if I could have added just a touch of black around this, as we're pulled in that color and with the text here. That would have been easy to do with a stencil or just even some little black dots with a marker, but I decided to go with the leave well enough alone approach. So I've got 2 coats of Mod Podge on there, and I did get a little bit of paint on the inside and I covered it with some markers. It's not the best camouflage job. I could cover that with some paper, you know, some designer paper or something, but it's fine for me because most of the time the notebook will be open to some pages or something, so that's no problem. It has a pencil holder, and one other feature I didn't share with it, this will actually come around to the front, and then you can sort of close it and hold it closed if you're going to take it somewhere. So this was Office Depot's hardcover business notebook, and we put gesso on the first coat, a couple of coats of gesso, and then started going through it with the Gelli printing. This was the stamped off page I had for Gelli printing that was really pretty. I wish I'd done it with the blue too, because the blue ended up, I guess I could use this, but it's that pink background paper. But this, I really like this, and I'll put this in with my Gelli prints. Did a little bit of extra stenciling, and that was it. And I'm very pleased with how it came out. So hopefully that will hold up well over the next few months. Probably maybe to the end of the year, this notebook will last. We'll see. It depends on how many to-do lists and how many things go in there. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked it, I would love to get a thumbs up. And stay tuned or check out my channel for other paper crafting videos, lots of scrapbooking videos, and card making. Thanks again.